Welcome to Serenity's quick guide to the phases of the moon. Now, whilst there are 8 distinct phases, what we're going to cover in this quick guide are the 4 main ones that most people will use for their magical practice or their energy and spiritual work. So the 3 main phases that we begin with are the waxing, the full, and the waning phase. And this is when most magical or energetic practices take place. So the first phase that we'll look at is the waxing moon. And this is the period that's usually calculated from the crescent moon. So you've just had the new moon, the dark moon, and you start to see a sliver of the moon being illuminated. And this is when we begin the waxing or the increasing period. And then it's usually right up until the night before the full moon. So you'll go through the whole first quarter, so everything from that sliver right through till the night before the full moon is classed as the waxing period. And this is a really good time for practices that relate to new beginnings, maybe a new project or something, improvements to your health, or working towards a more long-term goal. It's also good for drawing in and attracting prosperity, increasing or enhancing the prospects of fertility, and also attracting in good luck. So if you need a bit of luck to find a new home or a little bit of money, or perhaps you're hunting down a new job, the waxing moon is when you want to be doing your magical practices. It's also a really good time for increasing your psychic awareness as well. So there's lots of things that you can do under the waxing moon, and you've got a lot of time to do it. Typically from what we would consider the 3rd right through till the 14th day of the cycle. The next phase we have is probably the most popular for magical practice in particular, and that's the full moon. And this is typically calculated from the 2nd of the full moon if you're a purist. So you can find that information on any weather website, or there's lots of different moon phase calendars that you can find online. And or it's sometimes classed as the day or the full day of the full moon, and possibly the period until the next day as well. There are some people that will use a whole week for the full moon. There's no right or wrong way to consider this when you're doing your magic practice, because of course all practices are based around intention. So whatever you feel is right, that's what's most important, and that's when your magical work or your energetic work will be at its best. The full moon is a really good time to work on psychic protection. It's also great if you're looking to make changes, so a change of career, or if you're planning a house move or something like that. And it's also really good for short-term health issues. So we're not talking chronic long-term. These are short, acute health issues, and you can spend time under the full moon asking for healing of those to get through them quickly. It's also about fulfilling your ambitions. So throughout the waxing period, you may have been putting energy into a particular goal or achievement. And by the time we get to the full moon, this is when that energy is at its peak. And so this is when we're sort of aiming for as the deadline, if you like, the actual fulfillment of those ambitions. It's also great if you have something that you need now. So if you have any immediate needs, a bit of cash or a change of direction in terms of work or being away from certain people, that sort of thing, it's a really good time under the full moon to ask for those requests to be fulfilled. It's also good for love, for consummating love and ensuring fidelity as well. So if your relationship's looking a little bit on shaky ground, asking under the full moon is probably the best time to try and bring about a little bit more stability, and consummating that love back into the relationship. The last of the three main phases is the waning phase. Now, this period is from after the full moon until that last sliver of light is in the sky. So the last sliver of the moon that's illuminated just before it disappears before the new moon. And this is a really good time for removing pain and sickness. It can work particularly well for chronic conditions, because you've got a little more time to spend putting your energy into getting rid of something that is more long term in your life or has been long term. Whereas the full moon, it's quite quick, it's a short phase, so we're talking about acute health issues with that. But with the waning moon, it's more about long term, so more chronic pain and sickness. It's also a really good time for lessening the negative influences. Lots of banishing energies are used at this time of the phase, getting rid of people or situations that don't serve you, getting rid of any envy or malice that people might be holding against you or you against them, and also getting rid of and banishing those negative thoughts and feelings, things like grief and guilt, anxiety, anger, that sort of thing. And also, when we're wanting to get rid of bad habits and addictions or obsessions, so releasing addictions, the waning moon is the perfect time for that. Now, whilst we talked in the full moon about trying to bring some stability to relationships, the waning moon is actually a really good time for ending a relationship gently. So if you find that you are coming to the end of a partnership with somebody, and it could be a personal or a work relationship or a friendship, the waning moon is the best time to ease yourself out of that situation with the least amount of distress. Okay? This last phase that we're going to discuss is the new or the dark moon. Now, when you're working with a lunar cycle, typically you would start with the new or the dark moon. But because this guide is more about what kind of magical or spiritual practice you would be doing at different times of the cycle, I'm putting the new moon last, because actually it's not generally a time for performing magic at all. What this time is for meditation and divination. It's about contemplating what you want to achieve throughout the rest of the cycle, and whether more of your magical work will be done through the waxing phase, the full moon, or at the waning phase. And it's about getting in touch with the feelings and emotions that connect to your goals, your desires, and planning them so that you can make best use of the rest of the cycle. Now, when we look at when the new or the dark moon is, there are two different thoughts on it. And the new moon for me is a period of 3 days, and that's typically days 1, 2, and 3 of the lunar cycle. So when the moon is completely dark, it's not illuminated at all, that's your day 1. And again, you can consult a moon phase calendar online to find out the exact time of that. And the specific time of the dark moon, where there is 0% illumination, that is classed as the dark moon. But it's a personal preference how you work with it, what you consider to be new or dark. I work with them in both in the same way, but you must read around this and make your own choice, because it's your practice after all. Now, I've included this here as the triple goddess because you'll often hear of the phases of the moon referred to as the triple goddess. Now, the waxing phase is the maiden, the full moon is the mother, and the waning phase is the crone or the crony, or sometimes called the wise woman. And each of these has their own energy and own aspect that exists and kind of correlates with the moon, which is why you'll find that it's often referred to those three phases as the triple goddess. So again, when we're looking at working with the maiden, this is for new beginnings and creativity, growth and your health, and initiation of self and projects, which fits perfectly with the waxing phase. When we look at the mother goddess, this is a time for fertility, for healing, for nurturing, and it's also about our sexuality as well. And this is perfect and in line with the energies of the full moon. And finally, when we look at the crone or the wise woman, this is a time for wisdom and taking away of illness and pain, endings that lead to new beginnings, and it's a time for divination and prophecy as well. So, as you can see, that also correlates very nicely with the waning phase of the moon. And that's it. That's just a quick guide and an introduction to the 4 phases of the moon, the 3 phases of the waxing, full and waning, and of course the dark moon or the new moon. I hope you found it of interest, and thanks for watching.